Kid on the track. The plot was set, and the set was decided. As always, there were still some deft details and tricky technicalities to take care of. But the pair finally had true direction in their battle against the locomotive menace. Their mischief could finally be focused. Equipment was needed now, primarily garments of the clothbacks. And so Rock set off on a skyward scouting quest to find key items for his stockier partner to collect after dark, since the fox could easily be collecting bullets instead trying to carry them off from private yards in daylight. Like a hunting raptor, the rook circled properties, scanning for their needs. It wasn't long before he spotted a line with suitable children's attire flailing in the wind, well dried. Rock was wise enough to know that people often brought dry washing in before nightfall. He needed to secure them now, but couldn't hope to fly far with such drag. And so, making sure the yard and homestead windows were clear, he landed on the line, unpegged a dress and bonnet, then dropped and dragged them through the side fence to fold and hide in a pile of planks there. Expert stasher that he was. Taking to the skies again, the rook finally pinpointed a porch with the final item required, then flew home. At dusk they set off from Mischief Manor, the fox dragging an old drawstring bag once looted from a campsite, plain jaws and beak being incapable of handling the complex supply load of this new operation. They soon arrived at a nearby river, and there managed to remove a lengthy rope securing a rowboat to a dock, stuffing it into the bag. By nightfall they had reached the first targeted property, and here the fox dragged off and bagged a shiny, somewhat fancy boot, left recklessly at the porch, to the fury of a vain local man who would discover only the fancy left one outside his door the following morning. Next they stopped by the wood plank clothing cache to retrieve the last of the supplies. Arriving finally at Dolefield Meadow, the rook hopped upon a fence-post podium once more. The fox joined his partner beneath, and their bold plot was presented to the herd. "Cows of Dolefield," declared Rock, "great mischief has been brewing within our manor, which we hope to inflict in full upon this locomotive menace tonight, provided it dares show itself upon the track." "Lift your pendulous ears," said Rutsnut, "while we inform you of our tactics, which will finally secure you sweet revenge, sweeter than the thickest, most juice-laden stems of spring." And when this was done, there was anxious anticipation all around for the events to come. But for the first time, the Jersey herd of Dolefield had a sense of hope to relieve their nightly fear. Then with Berta more elaborately instructed, and the herd placed in temporary formation, the pair left them, dragging their equipment to a specific trackside location nearby, stashing the bag in long grasses by the meadow fence for later use. Taking out the boot, they headed to the goat pen, which neighbored the cow enclosure at the rear. Rock hopped upon a crossbar to do the talking, while Rutsnut, boot in mouth, lurked in the fence shadows, as nobody trusted foxes, literally nobody. Even their own housemates had to be wary. And all farm animals were raised by farmers to believe foxes were nefarious fur beasts, dogs gone wrong. So that even if foxes came in good faith, they would always receive the darkest of looks regardless. After all, that good faith could easily be just a sly trick, let's be honest. "Dear goats," said Rock, "sorry to wake you at this hour. But as you know, your fellow farm beasts are under attack by a maniacal train. And now is your chance to help." "How can we do anything?" said a big-horned billy goat. "I would back myself to outbut any creature alive, even a tractor on my best day. But a train is a different animal altogether. I doubt every billy goat in the land, butting together in unison, could ram a train into retreat. You'll simply get us all killed, you mad crow." "We're not asking you to ram the train," said Rock, "you horn-skulled." And Rock could barely hold back from insulting the silly bearded beast. "We are going to lure the train to a halt. And what we need is one of your kids to dress up as a cloth-backed child of men. All the kid must do is sit on the side of the track and wave a forelimb. We have organized a train stop just outside the cow meadow, and when the child is seen hailing, the train will stop to pick her up. Then we will surely strike the driver down and end this gory ordeal. For this simple task, cows will be forever in debt to goats for your generous assistance, offering you a moon's worth of daily donations from their meadow, the lushest of Dolefield Farm. And up front, I should add, you will receive this very chewable delicacy to share." With that, Rutsnut spun and slung the looted boot into the goat pen, where animals immediately began to gnaw upon its tough yet supple leather, Goaty Gums thoroughly enjoying this rare gift. "I assume you'd also like help with the attack itself when the train is brought to a halt?" said the billy. "The more horns the better, surely." Rock hesitated. This was an unexpected reaction, and a very unwelcome one, since the calculating bird had not been entirely honest with these goats about what was going to take place upon the railway that night. There were justifications for this deceit, do not forget. But if the other goats participated in this ambush, they would discover that the dear kid would not be safely hailing the train from a trackside bench, because there was no bench to be seen and no makeshift stop of any fashion. The only one to be found was in miniature form on the cold stone floor of Mischief Manor. Instead, these goats would discover a kid awaiting the ride in a much less traditional location and a much more hazardous one, right between the rails. and Rock and Rutsnut could well find themselves battling not just the charging train, but the charging goats as well, in a storm of parental fury. "I'm afraid we'll need the adults to stay here," said Rock. "We're still not sure which animals are immune to the locomotive's entrancing eye. The kid will be blindfolded by a bonnet as a precaution, but the adults may be vulnerable. And besides, with too many animals, it will just be chaos and draw the clothbacks out. At least we should have a few older relatives to join the kid at the train stop," said a mother goat, "and simply shut our own eyes when the train comes. It would also make the scene more believable, wouldn't it?" Rock's feathers were getting ruffled now. That was, frustratingly enough, a very good point by the mother goat. She was clearly smarter than the average hornhead here. "Well, we don't have enough clothing for you," said quick-thinking Rock. "We can fetch some," said another goat. "A few items are still drying on the farmer's line." And as the rook peered in that direction, he saw from the silhouettes against the skyline that there damn well were. Rock had to think faster still. He couldn't allow some goats to outwit him here. What a disgrace that would be. "You don't have the proportions of grown people," said Rock, finally, "or the smooth heads. You will simply look like trolls at that stop, hunched over with horns bulging, no matter how well dressed you are. If anything, it will only scare the train driver, who will likely refuse to stop and pick you up, but pick up steam and flee the vicinity instead." This seemed to silence the issue. But then the goats made something very clear. "We're not allowing our kid to go alone with you," said one, and all seemed to grunt in agreement. And this was very good parenting from the goats, it must be said, but very bad for Rock and Rutsnut's grand plan. The goats stood there defiantly, and it was clear to Rock that they would not budge on this, and that he would only be wasting time trying to combat the notorious inflexibility of goat kind. It was also clear the heavy-horned Billy would put up a great fight if the pair tried to steal a kid, even with cow support, at least enough to wake any farmers. There was nothing to be done. Using a goat-born kid was out of the question, and Rock rejoined his partner in the shadows to discuss the bad news. "This is a devastating turn of events," said Rutsnut. "I assume it will be the same with other goat herds. We could search for sheep in the neighboring farms, perhaps." But Rock had other ideas. "You look like you have other ideas," noted the fox. "I surely do," said the crafty crowbird. "I think we should reconsider using children, live children. The property we stole the garments from seems to house some big enough for this task. I located their room already by the beds and toys inside, and there is no sign of a dog." "Big enough, you say?" said Rutsnut. "That just makes them harder to drag away. My jaws aren't built for large prey." "Big enough so that they don't need to be dragged," said Rock, "and they can be spoken to and persuaded instead." "Yes, big enough for that, but small enough so they still don't have the caution and common sense of the adults, just like fledgling birds who allow themselves to be hand-fed because they've never seen a stew pot. What if it were possible to lure a child from their bedroom tonight and take them to the track?" The fox's amber eyes widened. "It would obviously be the ideal bait," he said, "better than any imitation, and give us a greater chance of halting that train. But how do we lure a child, particularly at this hour?" "In a way it might be easier, come to think of it," said Rock. "They are alone in their bedrooms, no parents in sight. We only have to persuade them to open the window, then convince them to join us. Children are usually looking for sneaky adventures, aren't they? We must simply make sure to offer them an exciting nighttime excursion impossible to pass up. The original plan has fallen through, so we might as well take a chance. What else could we hope to put together tonight?" "Let's head to that homestead then," said Rutsnut, "and we can work out our offer on the way."